What if I told you the real protein kings aren't in the meat aisle, and they're not hiding in a $70 tub of powder either? They're floating on ponds, sprouting in jars, and sitting in your pantry right now, quietly packing more protein per gram than beef when you compare it the right way. Because here's the part nobody explains: most meat gets measured as cooked, full of water, while a lot of plant proteins get measured dry, where everything is concentrated. That one detail flips the whole debate upside down. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Today I'm breaking down 20 superfood plants that can out-protein beef, some so dense they sound fake until you check the numbers. One of them was studied as a survival food because it grows insanely fast with almost no resources, and the final one has a one-cup showdown that goes toe-to-toe with a steak. So if you've ever felt stuck choosing between meat, shakes, or feeling behind on protein, this list is about to change how you eat, how you shop, and even what you might start growing. And trust me, this gets crazier the deeper we go. Before we even touch the list, we need to clear up the biggest protein myth nobody talks about. When people say, beef has 26 grams of protein, they're usually talking about 100 grams of cooked beef. Cooked. Which means it's full of water. Water adds weight, but zero protein. Now here's where it gets interesting. A lot of plant foods, especially seeds, legumes, and grains, are measured by dry weight. No water. Just concentrated nutrients. So when you see something like 40% protein, that means 40 grams of protein per 100 grams of dry product. That's dense. Extremely dense. It's not that plants are magically stronger than meat. It's that we've been comparing two different scoreboards without realizing it. And once you level the playing field, gram for gram, some of these plants don't just compete with beef, they rival it. A few even surpass it in pure protein density. But that's only half the story. Because protein isn't just about quantity. It's about amino acids. The building blocks. The part everyone argues about in comment sections. Here's the twist: several of the plants on this list contain all 9 essential amino acids. That means they're considered complete proteins, something people swear only meat can provide. So if plants can match the numbers, and some can match the amino acid profile, then why does the myth still survive? Marketing. Habit. And the fact that nobody ever explains the math. Now that you understand the rule of the game, the first entry is going to feel almost ridiculous. Because the plant that kicks this list off is floating on top of ponds right now. Now imagine walking past a still pond, seeing that thin green layer on the surface, and realizing you're looking at one of the most protein-dense plants on Earth. That pond scum has a name. Duckweed. And it's not just impressive, it's borderline unfair. Certain species of duckweed can reach around 40 to 45% protein by dry weight. Let that sink in. That means nearly half of its dry mass is protein. For comparison, many meats land far lower when measured the same way. And here's where it gets even wilder. Duckweed doesn't grow like traditional crops. It multiplies. Fast. Under the right conditions, it can double its biomass in just a couple of days. No massive farmland. No heavy fertilizer demands. It floats, spreads, and keeps producing. That's why researchers have looked at it as a potential survival food. When something grows rapidly, requires minimal space, and delivers serious nutrition, people start paying attention. But protein quantity isn't the only reason duckweed shocks scientists. It contains all 9 essential amino acids. A complete protein. From a plant that most people assume is useless. In parts of Southeast Asia, duckweed has actually been eaten for generations. It's harvested from clean water, cooked into soups, mixed into salads, sometimes dried and powdered. The taste? Mild, slightly green. Nothing extreme. Which makes it incredibly adaptable. So why didn't it become a Western staple? Because culture shapes appetite. If your grandparents never cooked it, you probably won't either. And once something gets mentally labeled as pond slime, it's hard to rebrand it as dinner. But duckweed exposes something important. We've been overlooking powerful food sources simply because they don't look like what we expect protein to look like. And if floating plants can hit protein numbers like that, wait until you see what a forgotten Mediterranean bean can do. If duckweed felt unexpected, this next one feels almost criminal. Because for over 3,000 years, people around the Mediterranean have been casually snacking on a bean that can rival the protein density of the biggest plant-based heavyweights, and most Americans have never even heard of it. Lupin. At first glance, lupin beans don't look special. But dry them down, and certain varieties hit protein levels in the mid-30s to even 40% range by dry weight. That's soy territory. That's "why isn't this everywhere" territory. Ancient Romans ate them. Egyptians valued them. Today, in parts of Italy, Spain, and Portugal, they're sold brined in jars and eaten like bar snacks. Salty. Firm. Surprisingly addictive. But here's why lupin never dominated globally. Raw lupin beans contain bitter alkaloids. If you don't soak and prepare them properly, they taste harsh. Traditional cultures knew how to handle that: long soaking, repeated rinsing, patient preparation. Modern fast food culture, not so patient. So soy stepped in. Easier processing. Bigger industry. More marketing. And just like that, one of the most protein-dense legumes on Earth got pushed into the background. But lupin has another edge. It fixes nitrogen in the soil. That means it feeds the land while it feeds you. A protein crop that improves the next harvest instead of depleting it. And that alone makes it powerful. But if lupin is the underrated snack king, alfalfa is the quiet workhorse nobody thought to promote. For years, alfalfa was treated like livestock fuel. Farmers grew it for animals because it's incredibly nutrient-dense. Deep roots, sometimes reaching astonishing depths, pull minerals up from the soil that shallow plants can't touch. Dry alfalfa leaves can contain impressive protein percentages. But most people encounter alfalfa in a different form: sprouts. And here's the twist: sprouts are alive. In just 3 to 5 days, you can turn a handful of seeds into a jar full of fresh, crunchy, enzyme-rich greens that stack into sandwiches and salads effortlessly. They're mild, crisp, easy to grow on your kitchen counter. No farm required. Alfalfa became animal feed in the public mind simply because it was so good at supporting growth, and we forgot that what builds strength in livestock can also nourish humans. Two plants. Both ancient. Both protein-packed. Both pushed aside by modern marketing. And we're just getting started. Because the next entry isn't a bean or a sprout. It's a tree people call miraculous, and once you see why, you'll understand how entire communities survived on it. Now we step out of the garden, and into survival territory. Because the next plant on this list isn't just nutritious. In some parts of the world, it's the difference between deficiency and strength. Morina. They don't call it the miracle tree for marketing. They call it that because it refuses to fail. In warm climates, morina grows fast. Aggressively fast. And almost every part of it is usable. But the real prize? The leaves. When dried, morina leaves become surprisingly protein-dense. Not just good for a leafy green. Legitimately impressive. And unlike many plants that specialize in one thing, morina stacks nutrients, protein, vitamins, minerals, in a way that feels almost unfair. It's been used across Africa, South Asia, and parts of South America for generations. Fresh leaves go into soups and curries. Dried leaves get powdered and stirred into whatever needs a nutritional upgrade. The flavor is slightly peppery, green, alive. It doesn't scream for attention, it blends in and does the work quietly. And here's what makes morina powerful: it grows where other crops struggle. Poor soil. Dried mung beans bring solid protein numbers. But sprout them, and the game changes. Sprouting increases digestibility. It boosts certain nutrients. And it transforms a dry, dense bean into something fresh, crisp, and enzyme-rich. That's why mung sprouts show up in stir-fries, spring rolls, soups, and salads across entire cuisines. They add texture. They add life. And they quietly add protein. Mung beans don't need hype. They've already survived 4,000 years of culinary evolution. So now we've seen a miracle tree that thrives under pressure, and a bean refined for maximum usability. But we're about to enter a different category entirely. Because the next foods didn't just support communities. They fueled empires. Now we're entering the foods that didn't just support people. They built cities. They fueled laborers. They carried civilizations through winters, wars, and droughts. These weren't trendy superfoods. They were strength foods. First up, fava beans. Favas have been around since the Bronze Age. Ancient Mediterranean cultures relied on them heavily. Egyptian workers. Roman soldiers. Entire populations used favas as steady fuel because they were reliable, filling, and protein-dense when dried. Fresh favas are rich and green, almost buttery. Dried favas? Hearty. Substantial. The kind of food that sticks with you for hours. And they grow in cool seasons when other crops struggle. Which meant protein wasn't seasonal, it was strategic. There is one important detail: a small percentage of people with a specific genetic condition can't tolerate favas. Most people are perfectly fine, but the fact that ancient cultures knew how to navigate that tells you something. This wasn't random food. It was respected food. But favas were just one piece of the old world protein engine. Because if there's a crop that quietly fed humanity for over 10,000 years without demanding applause, it's lentils. Lentils are ancient. Archaeological ancient. They show up in some of the earliest agricultural records ever found. Dried lentils land strong in protein, and when cooked, a single cup delivers a serious amount without requiring overnight soaking like most beans. That mattered thousands of years ago. And it still matters today. They cook fast. They store forever. They're cheap. And they work. India built dal around them. The Middle East built mujadara. Ethiopia built misir wat. France built lentil soups that feel like winter armor. That doesn't happen by accident. Lentils stuck around because they solved a problem: affordable, dependable protein that doesn't fail. And then there's the bean that conquered the modern world without most people noticing. Chickpeas. Chickpeas have been cultivated for at least 7,500 years, and today they're everywhere. Mediterranean plates. Middle Eastern spreads. Indian curries. Global grocery stores. Dried chickpeas bring solid protein numbers. A cooked cup delivers a meaningful boost. But their real power is flexibility. Mash them into hummus. Fry them into falafel. Simmer them into chana masala. Roast them into crunchy snacks. Grind them into flour. Even whip their liquid into foam. That kind of versatility is rare. And here's the deeper secret: when chickpeas are paired with grains, rice, wheat, flatbread, they create a more complete amino acid profile. Ancient cuisines figured that out without lab equipment. They just knew what felt right. That's not marketing. That's thousands of years of trial, error, and survival. So favas built endurance. Lentils built reliability. Chickpeas built versatility. But now we're about to shift into a category that surprises almost everyone. Because the next protein powerhouses aren't beans at all. They're tiny. They're concentrated. And they've been hiding in plain sight on top of your food this entire time. Now this is where people underestimate everything. Because when most people think protein, they picture slabs, scoops, or at least something that looks heavy. Not something you can pinch between your fingers. But seeds don't play by the same rules. Seeds are survival capsules. They contain everything needed to grow an entire plant from scratch. Which means they're naturally concentrated: protein, fats, minerals, energy. All compact. All efficient. And once you understand that, you stop treating them like toppings. Let's start with flaxseed. Flax is ancient. Older than most crops people obsess over. And while it doesn't scream for attention, it quietly delivers protein along with something even more interesting: omega-3 fats and fiber in one small package. But here's the catch almost nobody mentions: whole flax seeds can pass through your system untouched. If you're not grinding them, you're barely accessing what they offer. Ground flax, that's where the magic happens. Stir it into oats. Blend it into smoothies. Mix it into baking. It thickens, it disappears, it upgrades. It's the definition of silent strength. And then there's sesame seeds, the most disrespected protein source in your kitchen. For thousands of years, sesame has been cultivated across Africa, the Middle East, and Asia. But somewhere along the way, it got demoted to burger bun decoration. 2 tablespoons can add a meaningful protein bump. But more importantly, sesame brings minerals, especially calcium, in amounts that surprise people avoiding dairy. Turn it into tahini, and suddenly it's not a garnish anymore. It's a base. A sauce. A spread that carries entire dishes. Sesame was never weak. We just treated it like an accessory. Now let's talk about a seed most people snack on without realizing it's doing heavy lifting. Sunflower seeds. Domesticated in North America thousands of years ago, sunflowers were cultivated long before they became backyard photo props. The seeds are protein-dense, rich in vitamin E, and easy to eat by the handful. Sunflower butter exists for a reason: it's nut-free, creamy, and quietly powerful. And the plant itself? Dramatic. Tall. Drought-tolerant. Producing hundreds of seeds from a single flower head. That's not decoration. That's productivity. But the most shocking seed on this list might be one people scrape out of a pumpkin and throw away every October. Pumpkin seeds. Also called pepitas, these are concentrated nutrition bombs. Protein. Strong. Magnesium. High. Zinc. Impressive. They roast beautifully. They crunch perfectly. They upgrade salads, soups, trail mix, even sauces. Indigenous cultures knew their value. Modern kitchens often treat them like seasonal scraps. But seeds don't accidentally carry this much density. They're designed to build life. And that's the theme you're starting to see. The smallest foods on your plate might be the most concentrated. But now we're stepping into something different. A crop that got dragged into politics, nearly disappeared, and came back swinging as one of the most efficient complete protein sources on the planet. Now we get into the crops that didn't just survive history. They fought through it. First up, the comeback nobody saw coming. Hemp. For thousands of years, hemp was cultivated across continents for fiber, oil, and food. Then politics blurred lines, laws shifted, and an incredibly useful crop nearly vanished from fields in parts of the world. But nutritionally, hemp never stopped being elite. Hemp seeds are dense, rich, and carry a complete amino acid profile. Sprinkle 3 tablespoons on a meal and you've quietly added a serious protein boost without changing the flavor much at all. They're soft, slightly nutty, and easy to blend into smoothies, yogurt, salads, whatever you're already eating. And unlike many protein sources, hemp doesn't require complicated prep. No soaking. No fermenting. No overnight planning. Just open, pour, done. It's efficient. Which is why it came back strong the moment restrictions eased. Because when people look for plant protein, that quinoa almost faded in the late 20th century as industrial crops dominated agriculture. Then the world rediscovered it, and suddenly the forgotten Andean grain became global. But quinoa isn't the only humble hero that scaled up. Peas did something even more unexpected. For 10,000 years, peas were just peas. Garden staples. Soup ingredients. Side dishes. Then modern food science isolated pea protein, and it exploded. Split peas are protein-rich, easy to cook, and gentler on digestion than many heavier legumes. But once pea protein isolate entered the scene, it became the backbone of countless plant-based products. Neutral flavor. Allergy-friendly. Reliable texture. Peas went from grandma's soup to multi-billion-dollar industry. And they never asked for the spotlight. Now, let's talk about a food so common people forget it belongs in this conversation. Oats. Oats aren't flashy. They don't claim miracle status. But they quietly combine protein with something arguably more powerful, soluble fiber that keeps you full and stabilizes energy. They contain a better protein balance than many grains, and they're versatile beyond breakfast. Savory oats. Oat flour. Steel cut for chew. Rolled for speed. For centuries in colder climates, oats weren't optional. They were foundational. And that's the pattern you're starting to see. Hemp fought its way back. Quinoa reclaimed its sacred status. Peas reinvented themselves. Oats never left. But we're not done. Because the final section isn't about hidden crops or comeback stories. It's about the plants that literally built civilization. And the one that ends the protein debate in a single serving. Now we zoom out. Because before protein powders, before supermarket aisles, before macros and meal plans, there were two crops that shaped entire civilizations. The first one. You've eaten it more times than you can count. Wheat. Wheat wasn't just food. It was infrastructure. About 10,000 years ago, in the Fertile Crescent, wheat allowed humans to stop wandering and start settling. You could grow it, harvest it, dry it, store it. That changed everything. Villages became cities. Cities became empires. Protein-wise, whole wheat carries a meaningful amount for a grain. Not elite like legumes or seeds, but solid. Especially when kept whole, where the fiber and nutrients actually live. And then there's gluten, the protein structure that makes bread possible. Stretchy dough. Rising loaves. Pasta. Noodles. Flatbreads across continents. That one protein reshaped cuisine worldwide. Of course, wheat isn't for everyone. Some people genuinely can't tolerate it. But for the majority who can, whole wheat remains one of the most practical, accessible protein contributors on the planet. It's not flashy. It's foundational. But wheat is the architect. The next one is the king. Soybeans. If this entire list has been building tension, this is the payoff. Dried soybeans are among the most protein-dense legumes on Earth, often landing around 36 to 40% protein by dry weight. That's not impressive for a plant. That's impressive, period. And when cooked, 1 cup of mature soybeans delivers roughly 28 to 29 grams of protein. That's right in the range, and often higher, than a comparable serving of ground beef. Let that sink in. A single cup. And unlike most plant foods, soy carries all 9 essential amino acids in strong balance. A complete protein. No pairing required. But soy's real genius isn't just the numbers. It's the transformation. Over thousands of years, East Asian cultures refined soy into an entire universe of foods. Tofu. Tempeh. Miso. Soy sauce. Edamame. Soy milk. Each one with different textures. Different flavors. Different fermentation processes. Different nutritional nuances. That's not a trend. That's 5,000 years of culinary engineering. Yes, modern soy debates get loud. GMOs. Processing. Hormone rumors. Internet arguments. But strip away the noise, and soy has been a normal, stable protein foundation in traditional diets for millennia. It didn't need hype. It needed time. And here's the bigger point. From wheat building cities, to soy fueling entire populations, to duckweed floating quietly at 40% protein, the narrative that real protein only comes from meat starts to feel incomplete. Because protein isn't rare. It's everywhere. Floating on ponds. Hiding in seeds. Stored in jars. Growing in fields of gold. The real difference isn't availability. It's awareness. And once you see that, once you understand how many plant foods can compete gram for gram, you stop asking, where will I get protein? You start asking a better question. Why didn't anyone tell me this sooner? Here's the part that surprises most people. If you actually line these up side by side, protein stops looking rare. It stops looking expensive. And it definitely stops looking exclusive to one aisle of the grocery store. For thousands of years, entire civilizations built strength, endurance, and population growth on plants. Not as a backup plan. Not as a compromise. As the foundation. The real shift isn't about going fully plant-based or swearing off anything. It's about realizing you have options. Powerful ones. You can build meals around seeds that weigh almost nothing but deliver serious density. You can lean on ancient legumes that fueled empires. You can use grains that literally built civilization. Or you can combine them and create something smarter than any single ingredient alone. That's the insight. Protein was never the problem. Information was. So now I'm curious, which one are you trying first? The pond plant that looks fake but hits 40% protein? The forgotten Mediterranean bean? The sacred Inca grain? Or the plant protein king that can match a steak in one cup? Drop it in the comments. I read them all. And your answers shape what we break down next. Because in the next video, we're flipping this conversation completely. We're exposing the high-protein foods that look healthy, but are mostly marketing. And once you see that list, you'll never shop the same way again.